Well, I'm Joe Murphy. I've been in the compliance and ethics field for quite some time. Really started shortly after law school when I went to work for a company, part of the Bell system. And this was in 1976. And my responsibilities related to antitrust and antitrust compliance. So that was my first introduction to the compliance field on how you reach people, reached employees, so that they understood what the antitrust laws were and that they followed the rules and did the right thing. And I actually worked in-house for 20 years, which is really where I developed my thinking about compliance and ethics. One of the things that I focused on early in this process was the role of incentives and making sure the incentive system was consistent with what we said our values and our code of conduct was. So that people were not just rewarded for making sales, but that also their commitment to compliance, to doing the right thing, was part of the assessment. And so, in hindsight, it can be difficult for me to maybe tease out all the different elements. But one of the things I do remember back from those days is in the old Bell system, the security organization had a publication that they put out that was extremely popular because it was all the stories of people who had done bad things and what happened to them. None of these stories had identifying information, but everybody read them. And later on, when we developed the compliance program, this was now after the Bell system split up and we had Bell Atlantic, we put out a publication called Report on Integrity. And I told people, don't lecture. Nobody wants to read about the CEO telling you to do the right thing. So instead, we built on this model from the security organization and published actual war stories, all personal identifying information removed. And I told them, do not focus on the workers. Everybody knows you discipline the workers. Include the managers, include the senior people. And in all the surveys we did, this was the most popular communications vehicle. And to me, the easiest incentive is for the compliance officer to recognize someone who in fact did the right thing and make a big deal of it. And something as simple as writing a letter to the person saying, thank you for doing this, and sending a copy to their boss. And the story that I use, that I've heard more than once, is the salespeople who receives mysteriously in the mail or by email confidential information about a competitor, doesn't use it and reports it. And in each case I'm familiar with, the company followed this model of having a recognition letter, a congratulations, great job letter sent to the person with a copy to their boss. And I am sure that when that person's evaluation came up that year, they were recognized. And one of the big issues in compliance is culture. These types of stories help make the culture. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what culture means or how dynamic culture is, but the stories help create the culture. Well, there's an interesting question when you're talking about incentives, whether you're talking about incentives for being ethical. I'm not that good at judging people. I can't just look at somebody and tell what's in their head. So I judge by what they do. And that is judged on what they do as a manager. That's not difficult to judge. You can talk with someone's people, for example. If they say, yeah, when you ask the boss a question, he's got a copy of the code right there. He picks it up and looks at it. That's dynamite. That's something you can reward. The boss gets all of her people into the training, sits in the training, and asks the group questions about the training. You can measure that. That's the kind of thing you want to promote. You're not measuring somebody's ethics. You're measuring their management activities and their management skills to promote compliance and ethics. It's a very different thing from measuring somebody's inherent values. And not only is it not difficult, it's actually easy to measure. It's as easy to measure as any of the things that I used to have to measure subordinates on when I was in-house, like commitment to the company's mission and leadership ability. You tell me which is more difficult to measure, somebody's leadership ability or their commitment to the compliance program and their efforts to promote the compliance program. So that to me is a false narrative for the bosses to say, no, we can't measure ethics, therefore we're not going to use incentives. And I would recommend to anybody in headquarters, especially compliance and ethics people, don't spend all your time talking with the executives. The executives are going to tell you how wonderful they are, how wonderful the company is, everything is great. They're going to tell you how great the culture is. Go out and talk with the employees. If you have drivers, ride with a driver, do what's called a ride-along. Talk with the employees, have lunch with them, experience what they experience. That's the way to find out what's going on. And honestly, it's the way to measure culture. Many people in our field are captivated by surveys. I think surveys serve a purpose, but I have a lot less faith in them. I think it's very important to spend that time out in the field with the workers, with the people doing the day-to-day work. Maybe a little difficult now with so many people working from home, but you can still have breakfast or lunch with them and just talk and find out what's going on. I think that's a critical piece. And I think any company, as a general matter, any company that has a workforce, whether it's sales or production, they should have all their headquarters people spend at least a little bit of time with the workers. That's an interesting question. Why do people spend so much time on codes of conduct? It reminds me of a little story of a fellow walking along at night, and he sees a street light up ahead. And there's a guy on the ground, inebriated, looking for something. And the passerby walks up and says, what are you looking for? And the guy says, I had this valuable watch and I lost it. And so the passerby gets down and looking. Finally, he says to the guy, where did you drop the watch? And the guy says, down that way. And the passerby says, why are we looking here? And the drunk says, because it's where the light is. Why do people focus on codes of conduct? Because it's easy. It's easy. I used to do presentations. Sometimes I do presentations to senior managers, although I prefer talking to workers. And I take out their code of conduct and I dramatically put it in a seat. And I'd say, while I'm talking to you, watch the code of conduct. Let me know if it does anything. And the point is, a code of conduct is nothing but a tool. It is worthless unless it's used. And my favorite use for code of conduct is I want to see it on the desk of the CEO, open, dog-eared, and used. Then it has some value. It's an interesting question of how you go from individual misconduct to organizational misconduct. And this is something that we've struggled with for quite some time. Corporations are not big individuals, but they do exist. And so the corporation doesn't have an individual soul or heart. But individuals are not the same as organizations, and organizations are not just big human beings. So there have been different approaches in legal systems around the world. But what we have with the development of compliance and ethics is a kind of solution to this, that you look at the organization in terms of what it did from a management perspective to prevent and detect misconduct. And that's probably the best surrogate you have for analyzing companies and determining how to treat them. And really the best formula is one that looks at how bad the conduct was, whether it involves senior management, and compare it to how much did the company really do to prevent and detect misconduct. The easy case is one where you have one employee who covers up, does everything they can to avoid the controls, and engages in misconduct. The more difficult case is if you have a compliance program and you still have senior executives involved. But it should always be along a spectrum of how far do we measure this? How bad was the conduct? How much was the effort? Where was the corporation really? Was the corporation really trying to prevent this kind of stuff? Or was the compliance program just paper and preaching and not really worth that much? So that's kind of how the transition has worked. It's a more practical approach that also has the benefit of providing an incentive for companies to actually take steps to prevent misconduct. And I will say, one of the most important elements of the standards today on compliance programs is the requirement that you evaluate what you're doing. A lot of people who summarize compliance programs, what they are, leave this point out, but it is so important. Any manager will tell you, whatever you do, look to see is it working, evaluate it. Every compliance program, every compliance and ethics effort should be evaluated. Talk with your people. See if it's working or see if it's not. There's an ongoing discussion about the relationship between ethics and compliance. A lot of it, in my opinion, it just gets too theoretical. My question is always, what works? Early on, when I was in-house, we recognized that just saying to people, obey the law, doesn't resonate with anyone. And also, as a lawyer, I don't see the lawyer as some dried out dead thing. I see the law as society's effort to deal with values and to prioritize values. I also see that values conflict one against the next. Loyalty is a value, but it can lead to a lot of misconduct. So early on, we said, hey, our effort in-house has got to be compliance and ethics, integrity. We use the word integrity to cover the whole field. You're not going to get very far if the only thing you're saying to people is obey the law, because what some people are going to hear is don't get caught breaking the law, get as close to the line as you can. And I think it was Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes who said if your objective is to get to as close to the line as possible, you're going to cross the line. And so that's how I see the value of ethics in this, is that you're talking values and you recognize that the law deals with values. It deals with protecting people, protecting the economy, getting people not to cheat the government, not to bribe people, not to bribe government officials. These are all values. Law is not some dried out, dusty thing. It's the way society articulates and prioritizes its values. So my view is if you try to do a compliance program without ethics and values, you're just going in the wrong direction. If you just try to do ethics and values without recognizing the important role of the law, you're going to get into trouble. So it's real practical. It's not the least bit esoteric. It's how do you prevent companies from breaking the law? And honestly, we've not been that great at it. I hear lots of people say, we need to go beyond law into ethics. No, we need to get companies not to lie, cheat, and steal. We need to get universities not to lie, cheat, and steal. We need to get hospitals not to lie, cheat, and steal. It's a big job. It's never done. It can take all the effort and creativity that you have just to make sure that these big organizations don't hurt people. I predict that even as we're focusing now on certain risk areas, there's another wave coming along. I don't know what it is. I just know there's always another one. Compliance and ethics people are going to have to deal with privacy. And one of the issues they're going to have to deal with, and I wrote an article in the Rutgers University Law Review about this, the legal system is not as friendly to compliance as we might think it is. I predict that this new generation of privacy laws will be used to undercut compliance efforts. You will find people trying to interfere with internal investigations, interfere with due diligence, and these privacy laws, the penalties are so high and the language is so ambiguous, I predict they will be used this way because even the weaker European laws were used for this purpose, for example, to undercut helplines and to undercut the ability of employees to report on their bosses. So I would say always watch the legal system, always watch new developments to see how they might undercut what we're doing, and then don't be quiet. Don't be passive. Don't accept stupid things. Get out there in the political environment, push it. We need a lot more examination and pushback on the aggressive use of privacy laws, or we're going to pay for it in having our work undercut.